What's next doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by chance. What's next happens when experience meets expertise, when data meets dollars, and when steel meets earth. What's next happens when the promising work of Pioneer's state-of-the-art research centers meets the unsparing challenges of more than 17,000 on-farm trials. Our ultimate goal is to bring the next seed breakthrough to your fields, because Pioneer isn't just our name, it's our mission. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Focus Herbicide from FMC. When tank mixed with glyphosate, Focus Herbicide provides a complete solution. Burn off and extended control on key grassy and broadleaf weeds like wild oats, bromes, and kochia in lentils, wheat, and more. See your local retailer today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Thursday edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Today's show, like every Thursday, it's the Farmer Rapid Fire and is brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. For more than 90 years, Pioneer's developed and tested products to meet your local challenges, with new Optimum Glide canola, Enlist E3 soybeans, to performing corn products and industry-leading traits and technologies to maximize your yield potential. Pioneer's on-the-ground teams can help you get the right products for your fields. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more. For our American audience, you can just stop at pioneer.com. You don't need to go any further. Okay, it is great to have you all here today on the program. We've got a great lineup of growers to talk about what's happening on their farm, in their fields, in the pastures, in the barns. We're going to talk to Peggy Brekveld. She's from Ontario. We got Brett Israel from Ontario. Well, let's talk to Scott Perkin, who is in Manitoba. Andrea Stroeve-Sawa is in Alberta. And we'll finish up with Pioneer area agronomist Doug Moisey. Will be on the program today as well. So all veterans, wily veterans of the Farmer Rapid Fire. Really looking forward to today's discussion. Find out kind of where their optimism lies here for 24. What are some of the constraints? How are they dealing with some of the increased risk that is out there in comparison to 23? Really looking forward to it. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, or you can also call the RealAg feedback line. It is definitely an option for you. You just dial 855-776-6147. You dial that number, press the number 3, and you leave me a voicemail. Yes, I would love to have you do that. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll get started with the Farmer Rapid Fire in Thunder Bay, Ontario, talking to Peggy Brekveld. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Special treat today. We have a live audience, as you've heard. We are at the Canadian Federation of Agriculture meeting in Ottawa, Ontario. Today's show is brought to you by MNP. So as Canada's chief trade negotiator, Steve Verhoule was responsible for negotiating the new NAFTA agreement, the USMCA. In Canada, we call it the CUSMA. We're going to have a renegotiation in 2026 of the CUSMA agreement.
On July 1st, 2026, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico are going to have to confirm in writing that they want the agreement to continue. And if that just happens without much else going on, then we're full steam ahead. If one of those countries decides they're not going to formally commit to the continuation, then we're into a world of uncertainty, because the agreement will be in a state of having to be reviewed every year on an ongoing basis until something changes or it expires in 10 years. But I think beyond that, there's an expectation that as we lead up to July 1st, 2026, the U.S. in particular will start pushing for some kind of change. So there could be a negotiation that develops, and there could be a forward work plan coming out of that.
Have you heard of Vantage Ag? They're a manufacturer and distributor of liquid fertilizers, and they want to work with you. They want to learn more about you and your goals and build a relationship centered around high-value products and a customized approach. For more information on Vantage Ag, call Paul Sinkovich at 778-919-3370 or visit vantage.ag to get started today.
And we start off this week's Farmer Rapid Fire in Thunder Bay, Ontario. We're talking to Peggy Brekveld. Hey, Peggy, how's it going?
Very good.
Yeah, what's happening on the farm here this week?
Moving a few animals. We have stirred some canola and did some more testing on it. The moisture's getting closer to what we want, and hopefully we can ship that soon.
Okay, good. Yeah, I forgot that you were a canola grower.
We do that too, yeah.
Yeah, are you looking to expand your acres at all, or how many acres are you growing of canola?
Not a big amount compared to some of the prairie people, but probably 30, 40 acres.
Yeah. And how long you been growing it for?
Probably 5 years, about that, 6 years. It's a really great cash crop. Works well in the rotation for us. We're in the right climate, right?
Yep. Is it a winter variety or spring?
Spring.
Okay,
Spring.
Cool. Awesome. How are things in the dairy?
Dairy is doing okay. Last year's crop, the quality wasn't as good. The weather didn't cooperate like we hoped, so a little down in milk. So we milk a few more cows and still fill in quota. What more do you want?
Yeah, and have you been busy with the winter meeting season, or how's that been going?
Less than when I was president of OFA, but I'm still engaged. I'm chair at Canadian Agriculture Human Resource Council, who just had a meeting in Calgary. I wasn't there, but I was at a meeting in Ottawa a week ago, and Canada's Agriculture Day halfway through February as well. Chair of the Agriculture Adaptation Council in Ontario, and happy to lead the crew there too.
Do you have any employees on farm, Peggy?
We do. We have our son and our daughter, and also a little bit of casual on the weekend with a young fella.
Yeah. You bring up some of the work that CARC's doing, the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council, and boy, those numbers in terms of shortage of farm laborers, that is not getting. We're not exactly closing the gap there, are we?
No, we're looking at 100,000 positions open and vacant without temporary foreign workers. So if you add the temporary foreign workers in, you're probably around 22,000 shortage when we get to 2030. That's significant. And what I see, even in my small northern community, is people bringing in workers from other places, adopting new technologies and automation wherever they can, trying to find solutions that may be a little bit out of the box of tradition, but certainly the way forward.
And we heard Minister Miller say that Canada is a little too addicted to cheap labor, referring to our use of TFWs. What's your response to that comment?
My response is it isn't cheap. It includes, you have to do all the housing, you have to provide all the benefits that you would if they were Canadian, and certainly it's a process to bring in employees from other places. And there's hidden investments too. For example, if you bring in Spanish workers, you probably want to put up signs in Spanish that are those safety warnings, etc., around your farm. So there's a lot of benefit that they come and they're willing to stay and they're eager for work in Canada, but it's not necessarily the cheap option. It's an option we choose because we really want to bring in a crop, and Canadians aren't willing to do the type of labor we're looking that we have and need of.
A lot of times when people think about on agriculture in Ontario, they think about the Southwest. Right?
Yeah.
You're in Thunder Bay, obviously a different region. What's the biggest advantage of farming in the Thunder Bay, Ontario region?
Well, I'll give you two. The first one is it's a pretty tight community. And so because there's not a lot of people, you kind of have to support each other. And I think you see a lot more cooperation between beef farmers, dairy farmers, people growing goats than you might see in some of the other communities, because there ain't a lot of us. There's still a lot of room. We can expand and do what we want to do. So the competition is more about a community nature type situation. The second thing I'll say is when you initially want to buy, the land is cheaper and the properties are cheaper. The running costs can be tighter. You have to bring a lot of supplies in, so that is a higher cost. But saying that if you run a tight ship, if you're determined, Northern Ontario has some options and some potential.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you what the biggest disadvantage is. What do you deal with maybe more so than some of your other farming peers in other areas of Ontario?
Particularly with COVID, but even in an ordinary year like this year, when we need parts, we have to bring them in. When we want to look and buy equipment, we go and look in Steinbach, Manitoba, or look in Southern Ontario, even into Minnesota and Wisconsin. And so a very unique situation when you want to look at parts, etc. I think one of the challenges, of course, is you don't have a dealership nearby. So if you want to invest in the highest quality equipment, you still want to repair it yourself. And so that current law talking about right to repair really matters to places like Thunder Bay.
Interesting point. So how's the moisture situation heading into spring?
Dry.
Dry.
Yeah, I'm pretty amazed how big and widespread the dry is. I actually was walking 2 nights ago, and the creek is running already, and that's early. There is almost no snow left, and that's, again, early. And so that snow is our spring moisture, and I really wish there was more of it.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone.
Oh, no.
Right?
I feel for the prairies who've felt this longer than even we have. But, yeah, it is a concern.
But even in the Southwest, I've been hearing from, I talked to a grower from Chatham, Ontario last week who said, yeah, we're dry, but not in panic mode because, feeling that, chances are, probabilities are, based on past history, they're going to get some rain, right? But definitely, but concerned about the levels heading into the springtime, and everybody has a different context of drought. What's dry to me in Southern Alberta is different from you in Thunder Bay. It's all relative to your area. Yeah. But there's outside of the Atlantic provinces where the tap never seems to shut off, right?
They got a lot of snow.
Yeah. If you like snow, that's where you should be hanging out because, Saskatoon got a bunch this week too, but
yes.
Atlantic Canada's just been pounded. Really the bulk of the other growing regions of Canada, more on the dry side from when you talk to growers.
My biggest concern right now is last year we ended up with a lot of snow actually in May. And so basically, and rain, unnatural amounts of moisture right then. And what it did was we could have started early because it was a little dry. And then we hit this unnatural cold and wet that we couldn't get the crops in very early. And that's frustrating. That's really frustrating. So there's a lot of variability still to come. Hope sustains the farmer. I have a sign that says that in my house. Yeah. And we're going to be hopeful for a great spring. Maybe some rain or snow right now out my window. Yeah. Be nice. But I'll enjoy the sun today and live into that.
Yeah. Well, it is that, as the spring moves on, you have that voice in the back of your head that, we got, the early bird gets the worm. There is seeding, there is planting and seeding data relative to yield, but you also know you got to wait for that soil to be fit. And if you rush it, you're actually creating more problems and putting yourself more behind the 8 ball and off that optimum yield curve. So it's discipline, right?
Takes practice.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Peggy, really appreciate you joining us here today for the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Take care.
I think the more we think about it, the more what we heard from Minister Miller in regards to some of his comments about Canadians' use of TFWs to fill positions, just really, really off base, trying to appeal to a certain segment of the voter that would potentially support the Liberal Party as they fall in the polls. I'm not exactly sure what the thrust was there, but you just talk to people on the ground. It's just not what's happening. So definitely something that the industry is going to need to work on and educate the government in terms of how they're being used and why TFWs are important. And like I've been saying, I really think we're going to see farmers across this country really double down in their interest when it comes to how do I create, use autonomy and robotics to do some of this work as the technology becomes more available, because it's hard to find people to work on the farm. It's not like there's an abundance that aren't working. Look at the unemployment rate. It's very low. So let's take a break, and when we come back, we've got more of the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
There's power, and then there's superpower. Advancing the unstoppable superpower of pre-seed from New Farm. Take control. Eliminate weed competition and start clean in spring. Manage weeds early in canola, cereals, and pulses. Conquer, Goldwing, Thunderhawk, and Blackhawk EVO. Convenient formulations and multiple modes of action. Add more power to glyphosate, more benefits to your burn down. Go to newfarm.ca/burn down.
If you have a growing list of questions about getting more from your fields, know that Koch Agronomic Services has an answer for every acre. With a full spectrum of nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement options, Koch Agronomic Services offers a deep portfolio of agronomically effective products. Each designed to enhance yield potential, all available to help solve your problems. Find the answer that's right for your acres. Start by visiting kochag.ca. That's KOCH ag.ca.
At Vaterstad, we aim to be the world's leading partner for outstanding emergence. We're doing that through innovative tillage, planting, and seeding equipment that's optimized for your field conditions and soil types. We also offer industry-leading capacities to help you get the job done in shorter windows of time. It's all designed to give your crop the best start possible so you can maximize yields. Vaterstad, we look forward to growing together.
And we continue the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. We're talking to Brett Israel, who farms in Mapletown Township in Ontario. Hey, Brett, how's it going?
Pretty good, Shaun. Yourself?
Hey, pretty good, man. Hey, what's happening on the farm this week?
Well, this week is the London Farm Show in Ontario, so it's a pretty, kind of an unofficial start to the spring season, if you will. So that's exciting, taking place this week, and then it's as the calendar flips to March, it basically is just making sure that those preparations are getting ready for springtime, equipment being serviced, and of course, a couple extra chores in the barn to make sure that we're ahead of schedule when it comes to taking care of things, so that when the calendar flips to April, we're in good position.
Do you feel ready for spring?
I think it's a case that no one's ever 100% ready. There's always going to be things that come up that are unexpected. But in general, the milder winter, I think, has kept us all honest in terms of staying ahead of things. Equipment service-wise, certainly been fortunate to be ahead of schedule that way. And in general, I think that we're in the position that spring could come at any time, and we wouldn't complain that much.
Yeah, where I'm at in Alberta, we've been blasted by another shot of winter. You've been looking like it's May outside. It's been beautiful.
Yeah, it's a conversation I think a lot of folks have out this way because we have had some shots of winter. Certainly there was a period in January where it was sustained cold temperatures. Looking back at the pictures on my phone, we had some white stuff on the ground at the start of November. Now, it didn't stick around, but, we have had some winter. Obviously, it hasn't been nearly as sustained as other parts of the country. But in general, the milder temperatures certainly are nice. And I think we are looking forward to what hopefully March continues to stay like February was, warmer than normal, and that we don't pay for any of this nicer weather later on.
Brett, what's your outlook for 24? We've been talking about it a lot on this show. Our Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index data showing farmers more on the pessimistic side about what's in front of them financially for this year in comparison to last year, which I get. I had a farmer yesterday say to me, boy, if people think it's bad now, they should have farmed when it really was bad. It's all relative. What's your thoughts right now as you look at this the year ahead?
Yeah, I would certainly say that 2024 will have new challenges like every year has. Certainly the past number of years have seen very competitive crop prices. I think farm profitability has been in a strong position. Interest rates, I don't think, are going to come down substantially anytime soon. And we've seen that, the prediction of some folks that we're going to see so many rate cuts by June of 2024. Well, we haven't gotten one yet. So there'd have to be a lot of work done, I guess, in the next couple of months to make that happen. So I think in general, we're going to see some more challenging times. But like anything in agriculture, things can be cyclical. We can go through some good times and also some tougher times, and that might help to rein in some of the excesses and indulgences, I think, that our industry, might have seen in the past few years. Land prices in our area have gone absolutely ridiculous. And that was one of the main conversations at some winter meetings this year was, what's the future of land prices going to be? If they stay on the same trajectory they have over the past, decade or so, 20, 30 years from now, it'll be at levels that will seem even more outrageous than they are today. And if you were to forecast that forward at that same compounding growth rate, by the time that I would be in my 70s, we would see land that would be, looking at well over $50,000, more so like $100,000 an acre for land in Ontario. Now, I certainly hope that trend doesn't continue, because I think it'll become even harder to be competitive in that industry then. But if we think that, $20,000, $30,000 land's expensive now, if that track record continues, the trend line is a lot higher then. So,
yeah, I think the fear, I think the fear out there is, let's just assume that's correct. Let's say it does. Okay. Yeah. Great opportunity for the balance sheets for farmers that are, own land, if you're not borrowing against it continually, and you know what I mean? But it's going to be difficult for people to acquire it, or more difficult. It's going to be definitely almost impossible, if not already, for people to start, right? Yeah. And some would say that as we move and creep higher from these levels, it actually gives more of an advantage to funds and those, pension funds and hedge funds and those kinds of external investors, for them, because they can actually write the check, right? And it's more patient money. So,
and they've got institutional backing that the individual farmer doesn't.
Exactly.
They also are, considered to be too big to fail. So typically, when they take bets that are riskier, if the whole economy crashes around them, they're usually the first ones to get, coverage from the public purse, if you will, where the individual farmer on Main Street doesn't get taken care of like the hedge fund on Wall Street. And so that's an interesting, thing to look at. One of the things that I think is very concerning now is how debased we are from the actual capacity to cash flow land at these higher prices with today's commodity prices, right? And input prices have come back some, but they still are, quite high. Equipment prices haven't come back that much. So I did some, numbers, quick and dirty, basically. If you're growing Ontario average yields and paying the OMAFRA average, cost of production, in order to have, the leftover dollars pay your mortgage on a 30-year mortgage, land prices would have to drop below $10,000 an acre, and interest rates would have to drop to 3.5% on a 30-year fixed. The actual number is $7,500 an acre on a 30-year fixed at 3.5%.
Wow.
So farming may have never cash flowed, but the degree to which it didn't cash flow is certainly different if we're talking about $15,000 an acre land, $20,000 an acre land, or, we've heard prices beyond $40,000 an acre. Yeah. So it's going to be a very interesting year ahead.
Yeah. And, I think too, and I've been telling audiences this in my speeches, is that, this is kind of the environment, especially as we transition from what we would consider probably widespread good times to more widespread, poor, or, some would describe to me bad times, but we're in the transition period here because there's a lot in flux. This is where we really see a bit of a separation between the managers versus the non-managers. And I mean that from a financial standpoint, right? Strong balance sheets, networking capital, those kinds of things, they're back in vogue because they're important when we see profitability is not guaranteed to be in the black.
Completely. And we're seeing, too, if you're carrying operating loan debt, which I think a lot of folks are, just to keep the operation cash flowing, if those, operating loans were at 3%, it's very different than at 7.5% or higher today. So making sure that every dollar that's being invested in the farm is having the best outcome, the best output it can, I think is critical. And in the past, folks might have been more free to indulge in some different technologies on the farm. But I think today is this providing me a return on my investment? And the producers that are best able to discern where to invest in their operations are probably going to be the most successful ones. One last thing on the increase in land prices. My grandfather, Carl, farmed through the 1980s. He'd been farming since the 60s. And so he's always a great source of wisdom and actively involved in the operation today so strongly. And he said one of the concerns he has is it was almost, believe it or not, in his opinion, slightly easier to get going in the 80s than it is today, because you didn't have to pay off a farm with so much after-tax dollars than you do now. If land was substantially cheaper, interest was taking up a lot of your cash flow, but you could write that off. Today, in order to actually own a farm completely and pay it down at $40,000 an acre, that's a lot of after-tax dollars, which complicates the issue as well.
Interesting perspective. I like that experience and the kind of sharing, some in a little bit of a different perspective there. Hey, Brett, thanks so much for joining us here today. All the best to you. Good luck during planting, whenever that does come here, and we'll chat with you when the crop gets out of the ground. Okay?
Sounds good, Shaun. Thanks a lot.
Really great perspectives there from Brett Israel in terms of land values and where we go from here and cash flowing and all. That was fantastic. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've got more of the Farmer Rapid Fire coming up, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
If I asked you, what's the most important tool on your farm, you'd probably think of tractors, trucks, and implements first. But it's actually something much bigger than that. Your soil is the most important equipment you own. The real question is, are you doing enough to keep it running at peak performance? Nutrien Smart Nutrition MAP plus MST is engineered with patented micronized sulfur technology to refuel your soil for maximum yields. Learn how to tune up your soil at smartnutritionmst.com.
CDC Endure is a new oat line from Alliance Seed. High yielding with excellent disease resistance and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure provides the high beta-glucan levels to make heart-healthy products like breakfast cereals. For more information on CDC Endure oats, as well as any other products from Alliance Seed, check out allianceseed.com or visit any Alliance Seed authorized retailers.
And we continue the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. We're talking to Scott Perkin, who is in Elgin, Manitoba. Hey, Scott, how's it going?
It's going great.
Okay, what's happened on the farm this week?
Oh, a bit of repairs. We're almost done calving. Doing a bit of grain hauling, so typical winter activities, basically.
Yeah, how's calving gone?
Well, we've had an amazing winter. As much as people talk about climate change and things changing, it's been a blessing for calving this year. We've only had a handful of cold nights and not a lot of snow to worry about. So, a little more feed efficiency, a little easier calving, a little less bedding. It's been relatively good.
And what do you do from a marketing standpoint with those calves? Do you feed them out, background them, or do you sell them off as calves? What do you guys usually do?
So we're a purebred operation, and a selection of our bulls go to a bull sale, actually, which happens on Monday in southern Manitoba here. And then we sell bred heifers and then obviously just to market as well. So yeah, a typical cow-calf operation. Yeah.
Okay. And prices are looking, we talked about it earlier this week on the show, for the livestock sector, people feeling a lot better about the livestock markets than they currently do with, the wheat, canola, or corn markets.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a long time coming, and a lot of farmers and ranchers are excited about it and need it. Frankly, it's been a long time coming for the cattle business.
That's understated. Long time coming is understated. And I'm sure, like, there's been moments where it's like, why the heck do we have these cows? But right now you look at it and it's like, yeah, awesome. Thank goodness we got these cows. The mixed farm all of a sudden is back in vogue.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You ready for spring?
Yeah, we are actually. I got really nervous in early January when it melted and was +7 or whatever it was those few days. And So we ramped up and we're actually pretty close to being ready for spring. So we've got pretty major snowfall here in western Manitoba early this week, and so that's slowed things down. The moisture's been welcomed, absolutely, but it's maybe not going to be quite as early as we thought it was going to be.
Any changes to the rotation this year at all?
Not on our farm. A few more soybean acres just based on rotation, but in general, things are pretty stable. Cereal acres, we keep bobbing around with a few more oat acres, as do a lot of farms, I think. Just the oat price has actually held on a little better than wheat. But not a lot of changes here. There's some concern in the area about it being dry. But our soil probes, soil moisture looks like it's pretty decent, 85% of water holding capacity. So that's not much to complain about there. So I would say no, not a lot of changes in rotation, partly because all of the commodity prices have slipped. It's not like it's just been one commodity.
When you pencil out the commodities, what pencils out the best potentially? Is it soybeans?
Soybeans is at the top, near the top, based on an average yield, but that's the question that everybody talks about with the moisture. And it depends on what prices you're putting in for commodity prices in your spreadsheets. You know, if we can get back to a $14 canola and a $8.50-ish wheat, the numbers look a whole lot better. We're not there right now, so it's tough. You put a best case scenario or a worst case scenario, and they look much different.
Are you still trying to deal with some unsold 23 crop, or have you wrapped that all up?
I hate to say it, but I'm not dealing with a lot of unsold. We have a little bit of wheat and canola unsold, but I pulled the trigger several times in the fall and winter and got moving some grain. So we don't have a lot of unsold grain.
Well, you gotta be feeling good about that.
We are, yeah.
Because I was at Commodity Classic last week, and being on the road throughout Canada, there is a lot of people dealing with some unsold 23 crop and not liking what they're seeing where the prices are today. There's a lot of holders regret out there, which of course is in 2020 hindsight. As you look at the 24 crop ahead and managing some of that risk, how are you dealing with that?
Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right. You just back to the 23 crop. Some of the challenges were even just with the way that grain marketing is done now, because grain merchants want you to put a target in. Oh, put a target in. We're hitting targets at these values. When the market is slipping, they never go back and hit those targets. So a little bit of false security where you say, oh, well, I've got a target in, so that's basically sold. And then you realize 2 weeks later that they never picked up that target, and now you're sitting there with X number of tons not sold. So everybody's been in that same boat that, oh, I should have done it last week. I should have just pulled the trigger. I should have just. And so that's been frustrating for everybody. From the 24 crop perspective, I did a little bit early on, oats and soybeans and some corn. I have still not sold any new crop wheat or new crop canola. And it may just be, I'm hoping it's a situation. I know hope is not a plan, but I'm hoping that, we can ride a little bit of this wave and maybe we see some better pricing, even if it's March of 25, depending on weather and everything else, maybe we start to see a rebound in these markets further out.
Yeah. Sell into some rally kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a goal.
Yeah, but I wonder too, because of, and I think one of the other reasons why there's, definitely in Western Canada, why there's still, a number of million metric tons out there unsold on farm, also is the hangover of the 21 drought. And our over-reliance on production contracts as a way to do some of the pricing, I think is a little bit of a factor as well. But it's tough. This has not been easy. When fall of 21, market's going up like a hockey stick, it's a much easier sort of decision. Do I sell now or do I sell in 2 weeks and make more money?
That's right. Yeah.
Different situation. And I think this is also I was talking earlier with a couple of the other guests on the rapid fire here. This is also, I think, a year 24 where we're going to see, a bit of a separation from, the good financial managers versus the people that haven't been paying close of attention. Is that fair?
No, absolutely. I mean, you got to know your numbers and cost of production, and hopefully you got to do everything right too. You got to grow, the best crop you can, which I guess everybody hopes they can, but some years it just happens. I think too, you talk about production contracts and carryover and things like that, but I think we fail to look larger scale. People talk about it being dry in certain provinces or whatever, but we need to look at a global, at the global commodity glut, and we don't do that. We say, oh, well, it's dry in my backyard, so there can't be any commodities out there.
Yep.
In times of war, these prices should go up. Well, maybe none of this is actually how it seems from your front porch. And as much as the information is at your fingertips, it's about getting the right information. And I tend to think that we don't get the right information at the farm level sometimes.
Yeah, good points. I appreciate that, Scott. Hey, Scott, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Farmer Rapid Fire. All the best to you. Great luck with seeding and planting, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Shaun. Have a great day.
We've got 2 more stops in the Farmer Rapid Fire when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
And we continue the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. And now we're stopping in Taber, Alberta, corn capital, they call it. And we're talking to Andrea Stroeve-Sawa. Andrea, how are you doing?
Good, Shaun. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
Taber still the corn capital?
It is so far. We'll see how much irrigation we get this year. Might not be next year, but it is so far.
Yeah, there's other areas in Canada that grow sweet corn that always take issue with this self-proclaimed corn capital. I hear from the audience once in a while about this. So anyway, you mentioned irrigation and possibly the lack thereof it here in the 24 season, yet to be determined. But is this a major concern for your farm and others?
It's I'm gonna make some people mad that live around me, but it doesn't concern me a whole lot, just because we're mostly grassland, and so if I don't irrigate my grassland, it's not detrimental. But it would be pretty close-minded of me to think that not having irrigation wouldn't affect me at all, because definitely it's going to affect who's growing my corn silage and who's growing my barley silage, and what's it going to do, all feed prices and then thus cattle prices, right? So yes, it is absolutely a concern for sure. And it's a pretty dire situation right now. Like it's serious. We have to take a hard look at it. That
corn in Taber, that ain't dryland corn.
It is not dryland corn, and it doesn't really grow on 8 inches of water. So we have to hope for some really big March to May rains, I think. So, yeah.
You look at Southern Alberta as a whole, and the number of irrigation districts, and you look at the hybrid canola seed production, you look at the potato production, you look at the sugar beet production, you look at the edible bean production, the corn for forage, the corn for sweet corn. All of that all of that happens because of one thing, irrigation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If we don't have the irrigation in that area, there's really no difference between this geography and what happens in Foremost.
Yeah. Yeah. There wouldn't be any high value crops in Tabor if we didn't have irrigation. There just wouldn't. We're not set up to be. So yeah, it's a definite concern. It's in the back of your mind, and you read all the things that are coming out about how dry the Crow's Nest River is, and it leads into the Old Man, and so yeah, it's there. It's in the back of your mind all the time. But yeah.
What's the outlook for what's your outlook for 24? How are you feeling about the year ahead?
I feel pretty good. I don't know. I'm always super optimistic though, and sometimes I should look at the pessimistic side a little bit more. But feed prices are down. We don't have a lot of feeder cattle, but if you can afford to own some, I think it's going to be okay for us, I hope. And yeah, I don't know. I'm probably rosier than most people though.
What the heck are those feeder cattle going to cost?
Oh, a lot. They cost a lot.
A lot.
Like
somebody told me yesterday they're speculating $3,000.
Yeah, I think they will. We're not there yet, but we're close. It's not going to take much, and we'll be there.
That's incredible.
The amount of money that it takes to run this place, even in we're talking about how much it costs to run it 40 years ago and how much it costs now to just have cattle and feed, and it's astronomical, the difference between then and now. And the only difference that we have now is we don't have 20% interest rates. We have 8% or 7% or whatever. So you don't have as high of interest rates, but we have way more money invested to kind of keep the place rolling. So it's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. When I started doing this, I never thought in a million years we'd be paying $3,000 for a feeder animal, but here we are. Yeah.
Yeah, the operating loan required per head, I just compare now versus 20 years ago. If a crop farmer's listening to this and they think about where fertilizer prices, and how expensive that has been, I'm not sure it really holds a candle to the cost inflation we have seen from a livestock feeding perspective, especially in the beef industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you talk 20 years ago, we can go back and look at 40, 45 years ago, and that's just it's amazing to look 40 years ago. It doesn't even compare. It's wild.
Yeah,
it's wild.
How are things in the feed yard right now?
Good. It's we're a little bit wet. Well, we're cold now, but it's supposed to be plus 14 on Saturday, and we've got a little bit of snow. So, you know what that does in the feedlot. It's going to be a little bit wet and slimy, which isn't the greatest. But overall, pen conditions look pretty good. We didn't, that's one of the plus sides of not having a really gross, lots of snow winter is you can keep your pen conditions pretty good. So that's been really good. And yeah.
Yeah. And based on the weather, you haven't burned through a lot of straw for bedding either.
No, we haven't burned through a lot of straw, and that's good because straw was worth a fortune as well. So that's been really good. We'll have some kind of to carry us into the fall, which may be a bad thing because it's overpriced straw now. So that might kick us in the pants. But you kind of go based on previous years. I needed this much straw, and so you buy it at that high price. And, I hate being without it. There's been years where we've really had to struggle to kind of find it. So you buy what you think you're going to need on an average year. And this was definitely below average as far as straw use went. So I'm going to have some high price straw going into the fall, but such is life. It's one of those things that you make the decision and then go, oh, well, I guess I could have done something different, but oh, well.
Are you feeding corn or barley?
We a little bit of both. Well, a little bit of both as far as silage goes, but then just barley for grains. Yeah, we're not set up to do two different grains. Like if I switch to corn, I would have to totally switch to corn. And so I figure that I won't make that much of a difference switching to corn. So I let all the big guys switch to corn, and then I just find the barley that's left over after. And this is the first year where buying barley has felt familiar to me. So it like the barley market is much like it was 10 years ago. I mean, it's higher price, but it's much like it was as far as predicting and like being able to pick up cash barley and, that kind of thing. It's been nice to kind of count on, okay, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be like this, then I can pick up cash barley. And that's something that we haven't done lately, for sure. Like, you definitely forward contracted a lot of barley, because if you didn't, you weren't going to get it.
Well, that's
now,
what I was wondering. Like, with the fall in commodity prices, you're probably a little bit nervous to be buying a lot of barley way far out and committing procuring a whole bunch into the future because of how it has been falling. A lot more buying barley and in corn, for that matter, if you were feeding corn, buying a lot more of it on the spot market.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing. Like, I picked up enough just to get me through, and then picked up the balance just on cash. And typically that hasn't worked in the past. We've had to be really forward contracted on that, but this year, it worked. And it was nice. It felt so familiar. I was like, oh, I can do this. But yeah, like in the past, if you didn't have it bought, you were in big trouble. Yeah. So it's nice to have some things that are like familiar and normal to go along with these high feeder cattle prices and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's nice to have some normal marketing going on.
Yeah, well, it does sort of, I don't know, some calmness is when you get it, when you've been out of it for a while and then you find it again, it allows you to sort of take a bit of a breath. But it's
a little bit of familiarity is nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But
and based on some of the market, it looks like, right, the back half of the year does look kind of promising for cattle feeders from a margin perspective.
Yeah, it's amazing, because even like with these crazy prices, and I kind of priced out and I do some projections and look at what it's going to look like going forward, and it's something like they do sort of still make sense. Like, everything still kind of makes sense, and it's very rare when you pick up cattle, when you buy cattle, that they make sense right when you buy them. And sometimes they are right now. And that's very rare. Doesn't happen very often, but yeah. So even though you're paying way more for feeder cattle, like it is nice. Sometimes it's working, depending on the class of cattle you're buying and stuff. But yeah. A little bit of familiarity amongst all the high prices and volatility.
Andrea, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Farmer Rapid Fire.
Thanks, Shaun.
And we finish up today's Farmer Rapid Fire with Pioneer Seeds Canada area agronomist Doug Moisey, based in Alberta. Hey, Doug, how's it going?
Not bad. You're not bad. How about yourself?
Oh, pretty good. Well, hey, winter's back.
Yes.
Oh, man alive. I was in Camrose earlier this week, and very wintry affair. I guess we'll take the moisture, Doug.
Oh, definitely. It's actually put a little bit of more of a positive spin, especially like Lloydminster South. Still up in that North Country part of Athabasca into St. Paul, still only a couple of inches of snow that basically blew everywhere. But you start getting in south of Edmonton, Camrose, Red Deer, there's some good snowpack, and that's going to put some potential moisture in the field. So the positivity is turning around. We've never lost a crop in January and February, but now we're starting to get down to critical time now. So
yeah,
it's going to be good. So we'll take it. I'm not going to refuse it. Put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you've been at a lot of different grower meetings throughout the past number of months. What have you been hearing from growers from an agronomic perspective? What are some of their main questions that they're throwing your way?
Well, I think number one is with commodity prices being down, what fertilizer risk based upon moisture, the upcoming growing season. A lot of guys have already pre-bought the fertilizer, but they're wondering, should I be risking a lot more upfront based on moisture just because commodity prices are down? And it's because of that downward flow. So, but from that end of it, other than that, a lot more questions on weed resistance management, especially with eastern half of the province, because of Roundup Ready kochia or glyphosate resistant kochia being around. Guys are looking at, okay, how do I control it? And of course, the easy switch is that, well, I'll grow Liberty Link canola. Well, the thing is how many cycles before we start seeing resistance to glufosinate. So, there's a lot of questions on the strategy going forward. What do I need to do? And so there's been a lot of questions on that. And in fact, we have some people that have been talking about it to a couple of our growers, just, how do we start managing that? The other one is verticillin. Verticillin or wilt has really come to the forefront. It was considered to be originally Manitoba, and it's caught a lot of people off guard, and I myself too. I'll be blunt. A couple of years ago, I was out in the Camrose area, walked a field on some early maturing hybrids, and swore up and down it was blackleg. And now that I've learned more about verticillin, because I finally saw more confirmed field in the area, in through that Lloydminster right up to Westlock area. Now I'm realizing that, I misdiagnosed it. And this guy had verticillin a couple of years ago. So it's a lot more widespread than what guys are thinking. So a lot of questions on how do we handle it? What do we do? And it's pushing guys on rotation. There's a lot more discussion on rotation. And then, of course, there's always new things on the marketplace that guys are asking. So there's a myriad of questions going on right now.
Yeah, Doug, if your weed resistance strategy is to just switch to glufosinate-resistant hybrid, you're kind of actually repeating the same mistake again. Like you're really not getting out ahead of it. There's reasons to use a Liberty Link hybrid. I'm not poo-pooing that at all. Like there's solid reasons to do that.
Yeah.
But in terms of thinking you're dealing with weed resistance issues, that's not one of them.
No, and that's what we're trying to get across to guys. It's not the easy switch of just flipping a switch. Yeah, we're doing glufosinate. It's talking about taking care of it during the year of canolas, taking care of it during the year of when you put your cereal in. Maybe it's extending your rotation an extra year just so that you can help control that weed system. And of course, because the way kochia is, it loves these drier springs and it likes drought. So it is spreading more quickly and more rapidly. And there's a lot of old-time technology that's out there that guys have to start thinking about, okay, maybe I need to look at something like an edge type of a herbicide as a pre-incorporate or pre-plant and get it out there to help control some of that. So there's that. And so, and I think more than anything is that we have to start getting more to the forefront of that as agronomists and the whole industry, is that we got to get back to this whole weed resistance chain and how we're going to change things and help guys make some better decisions. And I know economics are playing a big change in this, but when you start looking at the central U.S. and the number of herbicide-resistant weeds that they have out there, we are on that direction and that path because of our rotation of wheat canola. So it's that thinking ahead 4 and 5 years and start planning 4 and 5 years ahead. So,
yeah. And Doug, one of the challenges is I think people are searching for that really simple, easy solution to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't exist.
No, the easy button doesn't exist anymore. And, it's great that we have glyphosate technology, glufosinate technology in our canola. It's really cleaned up from the old days when we used to have to put post, muster, Lontrell with edge, and that's how we control the weeds. We summer followed. But it has become a very simple system. And I think what guys have to think about, especially those younger guys, farming 5 and 10 years out is planning 5 and 10 years out. Where do we go? And I know prices dictate, but we have to start thinking, okay, is there some market to maybe specialize and grow? I'm going to throw out a couple of quarter sections of contracted oats, or, maybe it's going to a soft white wheat for an extra year and then looking at cleaning up your fields just to help with this whole rotational aspect. We've got with verticillin on the rise, we've got weed resistance on the rise. It's just a matter of that it's just not going to happen overnight that we can fix this problem. And then when you look at companies, to bring a new herbicide group to market is a lot of money and a lot of years, and it just doesn't happen overnight. And then, so there are guys struggling with it, especially in the east portion of that. And it's, in my mind, it's time that we start planning our rotations 4 years out. And that's easy for me to say, but it's called long-term sustainability. And that's what we want. It's long-term sustainability of our customers.
Doug, thanks a lot for joining us here today on RealAg Radio. Really do appreciate it.
Excellent. Have a great rest of your day.
If you have any feedback on what you heard today or some thoughts or opinions on any topic, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or call the Real Ag Feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everyone, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. Of course, the Farmer Rapid Fire is brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for downloading this Real Ag Radio podcast, brought to you by Focus Herbicide from FMC. Lentil and wheat growers get a clean start this spring with Focus Herbicide. Along with early burn-off and extended weed control, Focus Herbicide provides excellent resistance management. See your local retailer today.